Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. NFL Week 17 got off to a nice start for me. I had Browns minus 7.5. Was flying high. And then today, well, it's actually tomorrow. It's 2 a.m., so it's technically Sunday. But on Saturday, I started the day off 5-0. I swept 2-0 NBA, swept the bowl games 3-0. And then the Cowboys game happened. I had Dallas minus 5.5, and I had the over at 52. Obviously, they both lost. Still a great Saturday for me, but primetime NFL would have liked to get that W. But let's move on to Sunday. A lot of games, 14 NFL games. Let's get it started.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
First up, Miami on the road in Baltimore. Good AFC matchup here. The line is Baltimore minus 3. I think it depends on your sports book. There are 3.5s out there. Total sitting at 46.5. Action's looking pretty split on this one. There's a lot of people out there that like Miami. When I first glanced at this matchup and I saw the line, I thought the Ravens were going to be the heavy public side. It's really not the case. This number was at 3, then it moved up to 3.5, and it was at 3.5 for a lot of the week. But like I said, I'm seeing a lot of 3s out there, so this number bouncing back and forth. People are pretty split on it. Couple question marks on the Ravens offense here. Zay Flowers being the big one. He missed Wednesday and Thursday's practice, but he was out there for a little bit on Friday, so we'll see about him. Zeitler's questionable at right guard, but he practiced on Thursday and Friday, so I think he's going to play. Baltimore also has a couple question marks in the secondary. The big one being Kyle Hamilton at safety. He missed Friday's practice, so I say there's a good chance he doesn't play. Same goes for Brandon Stevens at corner. He missed practice on Thursday and Friday, so Ravens might be a bit shorthanded in the secondary for this one. Miami offensively has injury question marks everywhere. Some good news, center and right tackle, they are questionable, but they've both been participating in light practice all week, so I think both those guys are going to play. Robert Hunt most likely not playing at right guard. He's been out for multiple weeks now. Raheem Mostert, he missed Wednesday and Thursday's practice. He was out there for a little bit on Friday, though, so I would imagine he's a true game time decision. And, of course, the biggest one, Jalen Waddle ruled out for this game. On the defensive side of the ball, the Dolphins have 3 question marks in the secondary. Howard, Holland, Ramsey, 3 very important pieces, but all 3 of these guys have been participating in light practice all week, so I think there's a good chance that all 3 of these guys play. So let's match these two teams up on the field. As we know, Tua has been pretty great for most of the season, but not quite as potent on the road. At home, he's got 16 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, a 112 passer rating. Away from home, just 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 97 passer rating. Now, that wasn't a problem for Tua last year when he went on the road to Baltimore. In fact, it was one of the best games of his career. 36 of 50, 469 yards, 6 touchdowns, a 124 passer rating. But that was week 2 of last year. So that was all the way back in last September. The Ravens defense really caught their groove after that, at that point of the season. And I mean, that was before they acquired Roquan Smith. And as we know, the Ravens defense right now is playing. I mean, the Ravens defense right now is a lot better than the Ravens defense was in week 2 of last year. Speaking of the Ravens defense, let's take a look at their numbers against the pass on the year. And this is probably the best pass defense in the NFL. I think most people would agree with that. They're first in DVOA, second in opponent passer rating, first in yards per pass attempt allowed on the season. Now, when you look at the adjusted sack numbers, they're all the way up towards the top of the NFL. Kind of reminds me of the Chiefs pass rush from last year. They may not generate a ton of pressure, but when they get there and they get the quarterback to the ground. So the sacks are there, but as far as generating consistent pressure, Baltimore's not really like that. The reason I bring those numbers up is generating consistent pressure is a great way to beat this Miami Dolphins team. Tua, when given a clean pocket this season, he's 3rd in yards per pass attempt, 2nd in completion percentage, 2nd in PFF passer grade, and 2nd in passer rating. That's from a clean pocket. When Tua is pressured, he drops back to 23rd, 38th, 15th, and 30th. So generating consistent pressure on Tua is very important. But without Jalen Waddle out there, that really gives the Ravens defense a lot more flexibility as far as what they want to do against Tyreek Hill. So, I mean, I think the sacks are going to be there. And even though Baltimore isn't typically the type of pass rush that would give Tua problems, that pass defense has been so good that I don't think it's safe to count on Tua having a big game here. Now, what about the Dolphins' run game? Because as we know, that's got to be the way you beat this Ravens team. You got to run it in between the tackles. You got to attack the front 7. And bad news for Miami, they started off the season running the ball well. through the first 6 games, they were averaging 6.49 yards per carry, 181 rushing yards per game. In the 9 games since then, they're actually down under 4 yards per carry, just 106 rush yards per game. And the Dolphins are pretty banged up, as I mentioned before. Mostert, Achane, we don't really know what we're going to get from the Dolphins backs this week. The Dolphins run game is going to be key here because, as I just mentioned, the Ravens defense has shown us they can be vulnerable to the run. On the season, they're 10th in DVOA, 16th in adjusted line yards, just 22nd in yards per carry allowed. And as good as the Ravens have been playing, we've seen a drop-off from the run defense. Through the first 5 games of the year, they were allowing just 3.57 yards per carry, 91 rushing yards per game. In the 10 games since then, 4.91 yards per carry. So teams have been efficient running the ball against Baltimore. The reason you haven't really noticed that is Baltimore's offense has been so good during that span. They're averaging over 30 points a game in that span. So they're taking these leads and teams are being forced to abandon the run. But when teams have tried to run the ball in Baltimore in the last 10 games, for the most part, they've been able to do so. Situational stats on this side of the ball, really no edge. Dolphins offense, very good on third downs, very good in the red zone. Ravens defense, very good on third downs, very good in the red zone. Overall, on that side of the ball, I definitely give the edge to Baltimore's defense with the injuries to the Dolphins offense and the way Baltimore's been defending the pass. I really don't have high hopes for Tua and the Dolphins offense here. But now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. And the Dolphins pass defense has been really good recently. On the season, they're 12th in DVOA, 13th in opponent passer rating, and 9th in yards per attempt. But look at their numbers since Jalen Ramsey has returned from injury. 2nd in EPA per pass play, 2nd in success rate per play, 3rd in EPA per dropback, as opposed to before Jalen Ramsey came back from injury, 23rd, 27th, and 18th. But just like I said last week, you have to take note of the quarterbacks they've seen in that span. Sure, the Dolphins have excellent numbers against the pass, but Mac Jones, Aiden O'Connell, Tim Boyle, Sam Howell, Will Levis, Zach Wilson, and Trevor Siemian. The only 2 good quarterbacks that the Dolphins have seen since Ramsey returned are Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott. And Mahomes and Prescott combined for a 106.7 passer rating, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 7.1 yards per attempt. So the only times they've seen decent quarterbacks, they were able to play pretty well. And now they got to try and stop Lamar Jackson in this Ravens offense. And I mentioned earlier how Tua went off against the Ravens in week 2 of last year. But what about Lamar Jackson? He also went off. He had 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 11 yards per attempt, a 142.6 passer rating. And that doesn't even include 119 yards on the ground as well and a rushing touchdown. So Lamar went absolutely ballistic against the Dolphins last year. But like I said earlier, that game really doesn't mean much. I mean, we've got new coordinators, new pieces. I mean, these are hardly the same units. And this year's Dolphins team does create a lot of pressure. They're 2nd in pressure rate, 1st in QB hit rate, and 9th in adjusted sack rate. But here's the thing, Lamar Jackson has been excellent at handling pressure this year. On the season, amongst 41 qualified quarterbacks, when pressured, Lamar Jackson is 2nd in yards per attempt, 1st in passer grade, 1st in big time throw rate, 7th in turnover worthy play rate, 4th in passer rating. Lamar Jackson has been arguably the best quarterback in the NFL when pressured this year. On the season, the Baltimore passing attack has almost climbed into the top 5 now. They're 7th in DVOA, 6th in passer rating, and 4th in yards per pass attempt. So I like Lamar Jackson to make some plays through the air in this one. But as far as running the ball, I think this Dolphins defense is a tough matchup for Baltimore. This Dolphins run defense is really good. In week 1, they got run all over by the Chargers, 233 yards on the ground, 5.8 yards per carry. But look at the 14 games since then. Just 3.46 yards per carry allowed. Dolphins defense is 7th in rushing EPA and 5th in rushing success rate. Now, the DVOA numbers indicate that the Dolphins have had a bit of good luck as far as scheduling when defending the run, because they're 6th in yards per carry allowed on the season, but they're back at 21st in DVOA. And if you take a look, the Dolphins have only seen 1 top 10 rushing attack since week 5. So the Dolphins' run defense has been very good, but just like their pass defense, you have to take into schedule. They've had some good luck as far as scheduling. And as far as Lamar Jackson getting the run game going, the closest thing the Dolphins have seen to Lamar Jackson as far as a scrambling quarterback has been Jalen Hurts, and they did hold Hurts to just 21 rushing yards on 11 carries, just 1.9 yards per carry. On the season, the Dolphins are allowing just 3.5 yards per carry to quarterbacks, tied for 6th best in the league, so that's good. But in that Eagles game, Jalen Hurts absolutely cooked them through the air, completing 74% of his passes, 9 yards per attempt, and a 109.5 passer rating. Now, the Ravens' run game as a whole we know is elite. They're 1st in DVOA, 6th in adjusted line yards, 2nd in yards per carry. They may be a bit vulnerable right now. They just lost their most explosive running back, Keaton Mitchell. He's gone for the season. Gus Edwards started off the season red hot, but he's cooled off in a big way. Through the first 9 games, he was averaging 4.32 yards per carry, just 3.48 in his last 6 games. So the Ravens' run game, the pass game has been there for Baltimore, and that's slowly improved. The Ravens' run game as a team has slowly been trending the other way. Situational stats on this side of the ball, really no edge on third downs. The Dolphins' defense is 7th, Ravens' offense 10th, so both teams good on third down. But in the red zone, Dolphins' defense has definitely struggled. They're back at 26th. Ravens offense up at 8th. As far as betting this game, I know Baltimore definitely feels really square, but there's a lot of people betting Miami. I guess you could say it's a letdown spot for the Ravens after the big 49ers win, but couldn't you say the same exact thing about Miami and the Cowboys win? A lot of people are betting Miami here, and the line moved from 3 to 3.5, so maybe this Ravens play isn't quite as square as it feels. I don't care. I'm on Baltimore. Give me the Ravens minus 3.5 next game. Tennessee on the road in Houston, AFC South battle here. Texans are laying 4. This is back and forth between 4.5, but mostly I'm looking at 4s across the board here. Total sitting at 44. Houston definitely looking like the public side in this one, which sounds about right with CJ Stroud back on the field. Sharp action leaning towards Tennessee a bit. Like I said, line's been bouncing around. Kind of tough to tell in a game like this with the line movement because there's been so many injury updates that who knows if the line's reacting to the books taking some money or reacting to an injury update. The injuries are not to the Tennessee offense, though. Titans offense is completely healthy with the exception of Westbrook-Ikhine at wide receiver. He's been out multiple weeks now. Other than that, they're good to go. Titans defensively still missing major pieces here. Fulton on the IR. Simmons out for the year. Monty Hooker on the IR. They also have a corner named Caleb Farley who's out as well, but I'm not sure where he falls on the depth chart. The Titans secondary has had so many injuries this year that I don't know if Caleb Farley was healthy right now. I don't know if he'd be starting. If you're a Titans fan, maybe hook us up in the comments. Caleb Farley, is he a starter or not? Houston's offense definitely a lot healthier this week than they were last week. Obviously, the big one is CJ Stroud back from injury, back at quarterback. Nico Collins also removed from the injury report. Still missing some key pieces, though. Tank Dell out for the year, as we know. Also, 2 interior offensive linemen, both on the IR. Now we get to the Houston Texans defense, and brace yourself. This is ugly. All right, so they're missing 2 pieces of the secondary, right? And these injuries are relatively new. Jimmy Ward just got hurt in the Christmas Eve game. But Houston did pick up Kareem Jackson, the guy from the Broncos who kept getting suspended. He is now on the Texans. They just picked him up 4 or 5 days ago. He's going to start at safety, it looks like. He's a very good player. He's nice. I don't know how much of an impact he'll have on a team he's been with for less than a week. And that's definitely an upgrade. But it's not just the safety position. It's not just the secondary for Houston. They've got 3 question marks on the defensive line as well. And all 3 are very important pieces. Rookie Will Anderson, Malik Collins, and Sheldon Rankins. All 3 of these guys have missed practice. It doesn't look good for the Houston defensive front at all. As far as the handicap in this game, look, there's no way I'm backing the Titans defense on the road. Just no chance in hell. They can't stop anybody through the air. I mean, they're bad at home as well, but on the road, they're just next level bad. On the season in their road games, they're 28th in opponent passer rating, 28th in yards per attempt, 29th in completion percentage allowed. Titans are 1-6 straight up in their 7 road games, 2-5 against the spread. It's been very profitable, blindly fading the Tennessee Titans on the road this year. We just saw these 2 teams play a couple weeks back. Houston beat them in Tennessee without CJ Stroud. Now, to be fair, the Titans controlled 80% of that game and probably should have won. I had Houston +3, and they won in overtime. I was definitely lucky to get that cover. I mean, Titans were definitely the better team, but still, that was in Tennessee without CJ Stroud. Now they're at home in Houston, where the Titans defense has been noticeably worse. And it's not just that they're home in Houston. It's not just that CJ Stroud's back. Nico Collins is healthy. In addition to all that, the Texans need this game, man. There are 7 teams all within 1 game battling with each other for the last 2 playoff spots in the AFC. They're tied with Jacksonville for the division lead. Houston needs this game. The only reason I'm not absolutely hammering the Texans here is that defense. And I mean, obviously the injuries are a huge concern, but the secondary as a whole looks really bad, really unreliable right now. Joe Flacco just went absolutely nuts on this Houston secondary last week. 2 weeks before that, Zach Wilson, 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in bad weather. I mean, Zach Wilson. I really don't have a ton of faith in this Houston defense right now. I'm on the Texans, but I mean, Houston -4 might have been one of my favorite bets of the month if it wasn't for this defense. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take Houston -4, but I'm going to split my money in half and put the other half on the over at 44. Next game. New England Patriots on the road in Buffalo. Bills are laying 14 points here. Total sitting at 40. This one's shaping up to be a bit of a pros versus public setup here. Public actually leaning New England according to the data. Sharp action seems to be on Buffalo. Actually, it looks like the pros bought in on Buffalo heavy at 13 and 13.5. We'll see what happens now that we've got 14s open. Let's talk injuries. New England's offense is definitely banged up. Two pieces from the offensive line missing. No Smith-Schuster. Stevenson obviously still on the IR. Hunter Henry is questionable, but he's been practicing all week, so I actually think Hunter Henry's going to play. New England's defense is an absolute mess. So they're definitely missing 4 corners. They are definitely missing 4 corners in this game, and Jonathan Jones is questionable. So if Jonathan Jones is unable to play, the Patriots will be without their top 5 corners in this game. They're also missing Jabril Peppers at safety. And the other safety is questionable, and he hasn't practiced all week. So it's looking like New England has a chance to be without 5 corners and both safeties in this game. It's truly crazy. The defensive front is actually healthy with the exception of Matthew Judon, he's out for the year and he's been out for a while now. Buffalo offensively is completely healthy. 0 injuries to the Bills offense for this one. Buffalo's defense is obviously still missing the same 3 guys that have been out for a while now. I actually think all 3 of those guys are out for the season. Other than that, this is the healthiest the Bills defense has been in a few weeks. Micah Hyde's been banged up. He's good to go. As far as betting this game, I mean, obviously Buffalo is the much stronger team here. The problem is this new look Buffalo offense with Joe Brady as OC, they like to run the ball a lot. Before Joe Brady took over, Buffalo was averaging just 25 rush attempts per game. In the 5 games since he took over play calling, they're averaging 37 carries per game. So we're talking about a night and day difference. This Bills offense is a run-first offense right now, and New England probably has the best run defense in the NFL. I mean, not even probably. This is the best run defense in the NFL. Might not even be close. They're first in yards per carry allowed, first in DVOA, second in EPA per rush. So there is an angle there for New England. The Bills, with this new OC, they love to run the ball. New England's got a great run defense. I mean, I see the angle. The problem is with all those injuries to the Patriots secondary, are you really, I mean, is it that crazy to think, oh no, the Bills are going to have to throw it? Okay, well, it's Josh Allen. Josh Allen, Diggs, Gabe Davis, Kincaid against the Patriots' 6th, 7th, and 8th corners and 3rd and 4th safeties. I mean, I like the Patriots defense, but just because they throw the Bills off their game plan a little doesn't mean I think they're going to struggle to move the ball against a practice squad secondary. So I guess I'd have to lean Buffalo here, but I think there's a real good chance I just pass on this one. Next game. Rams at Giants. Rams are in MetLife. Giants catching 6 points at home, and this total sitting at 43.5. Data is showing public pretty split on this one. Sharp action seems to be leaning towards the Giants, but this line jumped from 5.5 up to 6, indicating that they took some sharp Rams money in. And as of recording this right now, I'm seeing nothing but 6s across the board. Giants offensively are going to be missing Evan Neal at right tackle again. Wan'Dale Robinson is listed as questionable. He has been practicing though, so I think he might play. Looks like the Tommy DeVito madness is over. Tyrod Taylor is set to get the start. According to the depth chart, Tyrod Taylor is going to start this game at quarterback. Giants defense is in great shape injury-wise. Deontay Banks is listed as questionable at corner, but he practiced on Thursday and Friday, so he should be out there. Rams have 2 big question marks on the offense, and they're key pieces. Puka Nacua and Jackson, the left tackle, both listed as questionable, and neither of these guys practice on Friday. So it's looking like these 2 guys might sit out this game. Same goes for Ernest Jones at linebacker on the defensive side. He didn't practice on Friday either and is listed as questionable. The rest of the Rams defense is healthy and ready to roll though. This was a very simple handicap for me. I'm not overthinking it. I'm on the Rams. I don't think the market has caught up to how good this Rams team is playing. They're averaging over 32 points per game in their last 5 since Kyren Williams is back. In fact, you can probably make the argument that if you only counted the games where Kyren Williams is healthy, that this might be the best offense in the NFL. I know that sounds crazy, but the numbers don't lie. Since Matt Stafford returned from injury, the Rams are 5-1. The last 4 wins have been comfortable, nearly blowout wins. Their only loss on the road in Baltimore, who may be the best team in the NFL right now, and they almost beat them. They were winning that game. They took the Ravens to overtime in Baltimore. I don't think people realize how well this Rams team is playing right now. I think people have forgot that this Rams team just won the Super Bowl in February of 2022. It really wasn't that long ago, and I think they have a good shot of going back. I think you can make the argument that right now the Rams are the second best team in the NFC behind the 49ers based on how they're playing right now. I like the Rams in a blowout here. Rams -6 next game. 49ers at Commanders. Washington catching 14 points now at home. Total sitting at 49.5. Action's coming in all over the 49ers in this one, as you'd expect. Line reacts to it. It was at 12.5 for most of the week. It jumped up to 13 and 13.5. Now I'm seeing 14s across the board. We'll have to keep an eye on some buyback as far as the Washington side goes, but as of right now, it seems like everyone's betting San Francisco. Let's talk injuries. 49ers offensively are missing Jennings at wide receiver. Also, Aaron Banks is listed as questionable at guard. He was listed as questionable last week as well, and he ended up playing in the Baltimore game. We'll have to see if he plays in this one. On the defensive side of the ball, 49ers are missing that safety Brown, which is huge because he's not even the starter. The only reason he's starting right now is because Hufanga's out for the season. So 49ers are going to have the fourth safety on their depth chart starting in this one. Also, Eric Armstead is out on the defensive line. Not nearly as worried about that because you want to know who the third defensive tackle is on the 49ers depth chart. It's Javon Kinlaw, who would probably start on 29, 30 NFL teams, so not too worried about the Armstead injury. Washington offensively definitely dealing with some issues on the line. A couple pieces out on that offensive line. Right tackle's questionable as well. I think Sam Howell is officially benched. I think he's officially the backup quarterback now, and Jacoby Brissett is the starter. But Brissett is questionable. He might not even be medically cleared to play in this game, so we might still see Sam Howell in this one. Really not sure at this point. On the defensive side of the ball, the Washington Commanders secondary is an absolute train wreck. They're missing both starting corners. They're also missing two safeties. Percy Butler's out. Derek Forrest is still on the IR. So the Commanders secondary is in serious trouble here. I really don't have a ton of interest in betting this game, if I'm being honest. The only way Washington covers is if San Francisco comes out flat. And I mean, they do have Sean McVay and the Rams on deck next week, so maybe I could see it. But the fact that they're coming off an ugly home loss to Baltimore, you'd think Kyle Shanahan would have that group ready to roll and come back and make a statement that was just a fluke. It was just an off week. Brock Purdy should have an explosive day through the air against this bad, injured Washington Commanders secondary. So I'll say 49ers -14 or pass, but very seriously doubt I bet this game. Next, Cardinals on the road in Philly. Eagles are laying 12 here, and the total sitting at 48. Sharp action actually coming in on Arizona in this one, according to the data, but the line's not moving that way. It's moving the other way. It went from 10.5 earlier in the week. Now I'm seeing 12s. Actually seeing 12.5. Yo, Bet Rivers has a 13 open. So yeah, it's moving towards Philly as I'm recording this. Let's talk injuries. Arizona offensively is going to be without Hollywood Brown at wide receiver. Also, Kyler Murray may not play in this one. He's dealing with an illness, which a ton of people are. It's flu season. He missed practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Kyler Murray did practice a little bit on Friday, though, so we'll see. On the defensive side, Cardinals missing pieces on the defensive front. They've been missing pieces on that defensive front all year. There's actually only 2 starters out, but there's also injuries to the depth. There's 2 more defensive tackles behind Fotu that are out. So the Cards are going to be really thin on the defensive interior. Not exactly what you want to see before you play that Eagles offensive line. On the Philly side, no injuries to the offense. The Eagles offense completely ready to roll. Eagles defensively, still really thin at linebacker. Nakobe Dean is out. I think he's out for the season. He had foot surgery, and I don't know if there's a timetable. Whatever, he's out for this game. We know that. Looks like Zach Cunningham's going to miss another game as well. That one hurts because Zach Cunningham's been one of the best players on that defense this year. Also, Darius Slay going to miss another game at corner. This is another game that I just don't really have any interest in betting. I think the Eagles probably cover this, but Philly really hasn't looked right all year, and this is such a big number. 14 games on the board today. There's better value elsewhere. Next game, Saints at Bucks in Tampa Bay. This is a big one for that division. Bucks are laying 2.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 42. New Orleans is looking like the public side in this one, which surprises me. I thought people would be coming in on Tampa. We've seen this line touch 3 a few times here and there, but for the most part, we're looking at 2.5s across the board. Saints offensively are going to be missing Ramczyk at right tackle again. Michael Thomas still on the IR. Alvin Kamara might sit this game out also. He didn't practice on Friday. He's also dealing with that illness. So definitely some question marks on the Saints offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Saints are still missing Marshawn Lattimore at corner, which has really hurt them. They're also missing Marcus May at safety. I think he's out for the year. So the Saints secondary in a really tough spot. Cameron Jordan also listed as questionable, but he hasn't missed a practice all week, so I think he's going to play. On the Tampa Bay side, Bucs offense completely healthy. No injury designations for Tampa Bay on the offensive side of the ball. Bucs are missing a couple key pieces on defense, though. Shaq Barrett has been ruled out for this game. Same with Carlton Davis at corner. He's been ruled out as well. Seems like the Bucs are always 1 or 2 pieces away. Every time they get somebody back, someone else goes down. Overall, Bucs defense in pretty decent shape. So let's match these two teams up on the field. And we'll start with the Saints offense. And I think we have enough of a sample size here where we can officially say the Saints have not gotten the boost from their passing game that they wanted to when they brought Derek Carr in. On the season, they're just 21st in DVOA, 14th in passer rating, and 20th in yards per attempt. And what makes it even worse is they're 31st in strength of schedule. So they have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. Still not impressive passing numbers. But the thing is, if you go by Derek Carr's box scores, it actually looks like he's doing all right. In fact, looks like he's gaining momentum. And if you look at his last 4 games, a 108.7 passer rating, over 73% completions, 7.6 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, 5th in success rate per drop back. I mean, his numbers look great. It is worth noting, though, in the Rams and Lions games, he was down big early, took advantage of some soft zones, but that is the Derek Carr way. I said the same thing last week. I mean, Saints will get beat 34-19. And you'll go look at the box score. Derek Carr somehow 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like somehow Derek Carr puts up great numbers, whether the Saints win or lose. And if you watch the game, you know he didn't play well, but the numbers don't reflect that. Now Carr is matched up against a Bucs defense that completely shut him down earlier in the season. This is one of Derek Carr's worst statistical games this year. It was the first time they played Tampa. 23 of 37, 127 yards, 3.7 yards per attempt, 68 passer rating. That was at home in the Dome too. Now, we do need to add some context there. The game before that was the game against the Packers, and if you remember, Derek Carr left that game early with a shoulder injury, and it was pretty obvious in that Bucs game that it was affecting him. Like, he was not 100%. Not trying to make excuses for him, but if you watch that game, you know Derek Carr was a little banged up. So how will he fare this time? This time we're in Tampa. Well, Bucs pass defense as a whole isn't exactly something to write home about. On the season, they're 13th in DVOA, 23rd in opponent passer rating, 27th in yards per attempt, 17th in a completion percentage allowed. But we do have to bring up their home-away splits. They definitely defended the pass better at home compared to the road. At home, they're 19th in YPA, 7th in passer rating, 11th in completion percentage. On the road, 26th, 30th, 26th. One thing we know about this Tampa Bay defense is they blitz a lot. They're second in blitz frequency in the NFL, second only to the Vikings. So we got to look at Derek Carr's numbers when blitzed, and he's actually been all right. There's some issues here, though. You see 12th in completion percentage, 13th in yards per attempt, 13th in big time throw, 14th in passer rating, but 29th in pressure to sack, 30th in turnover worthy play rate. So when you blitz Derek Carr, he makes some big plays and puts up some numbers, but he also takes a lot of sacks and turns the ball over. The thing about this Bucs pass rush, though, is that it's not very good. Yeah, they blitz a lot, but they don't really get to the quarterback. They're just 27th in pressure rate. And when given a clean pocket, Derek Carr's actually been really good numbers-wise. We know you got to take Derek Carr's numbers with a grain of salt. But when given a clean pocket, he's 8th in passer rating, 7th in completion percentage. So as much as I don't trust Derek Carr, as much as I don't trust his box scores, I actually like the matchup here on the road in Tampa Bay. I think he's in a spot to have a big game, in my opinion. But what about the run game? Is he going to have any run support? The Saints rushing offense, I don't really know how to take these numbers. This is so strange. So they're 13th in rushing DVOA and 7th in adjusted line yards, but they're just 30th in yards per carry. So their stats are terrible running the ball, but the numbers suggest that they're undervalued. I'm not really sure, and I checked multiple sources, DVOA, I checked EPA per rush. It seems like a lot of advanced metrics think the Saints have a decent rushing attack, even though the numbers don't reflect it. So you take that and do with that information as you will. I don't really know what to make of it. In the last 4 weeks, just 83 rushing yards per game, 3.17 yards per carry. So again, I don't know how you trust the Saints rushing attack, but if you're a stat head, if you like those advanced metrics, they indicate that the Saints rushing attack is very good. I call BS. This is a tough matchup though, because yeah, we can poke holes in the Bucs pass defense, but not their run defense. This is one of the better run defenses in the NFL. Over the last 4 weeks, Bucs are allowing just 81.5 rush yards per game, 3.62 yards per carry. On their last 5 games at home, just 81.6 rushing yards per game allowed, 3.32 yards per carry. And then you add on the fact that Kamara missed some practices, got added to the injury report with an illness, and he may not play. I don't know how you can trust the Saints to get the run game going here. I certainly don't. Situational stats on this side of the ball. Edge goes to the Saints on third down, 16th to 26th. But in the red zone, edge goes to the Tampa Bay Bucs. They're at 4th. Saints are at 19th. I will say the Bucs defense hasn't been quite as good in the red zone last month and a half as they were earlier in the season, but still, edge goes to the Bucs. Now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball, and we'll talk about the Saints defense. Against the pass, this is a top 10 unit. 10th in DVOA, 3rd in opponent passer rating, 6th in yards per attempt allowed. But this Saints defense, and I was talking about this last week, we've seen them get exposed when they've seen good quarterbacks. Matt Stafford just went nuts on primetime last week, 328 yards, over 70% completions, 9.6 yards per attempt, a 120.7 passer rating. And if you look at the Saints results, there's kind of a pattern forming here. So they just seem to play really good against bad. Actually, just check this out. I'll read the numbers off. So the Saints, in their 7 games this year against teams with winning records, they're allowing 27.8 points per game, a 102 passer rating. They're 1-6 in those 7 games. In the 8 games they've played against teams with losing records, they're allowing just 12.9 points per game, 57.6 passer rating, and 6-2 in those 8 games. So the Saints defense is absolutely elite, one of the best defenses in the NFL against bad teams. Against good teams, you just can't count on this defense, I guess. I know that's crazy, those splits, but hey, numbers don't lie. Now, the Bucs are a team with a winning record, and you know what? They're a team with a winning record that have a quarterback that's playing really well. Baker Mayfield is on a heater right now. In his last 2 starts, Baker Mayfield, 332 yards per game, 10.5 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, no picks, 137 passer rating. I mean, Baker Mayfield's playing the best football of his career right now. And in the first matchup on the road in New Orleans, Baker lit the Saints up. 78% completions, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 116.9 passer rating. And now, as I mentioned, Saints are going to be without Marshawn Lattimore again for this one, which is huge because maybe Mike Evans will actually finish the football game. I mean, that's a joke, but feels like whenever these two teams play, those two guys get in a fight and they both get kicked out. So maybe with no Lattimore, we'll see Mike Evans finish and play all 4 quarters. Last up, we'll talk about the Saints run defense. And as we know, it's been pretty bad. I mean, this just doesn't look like a Dennis Allen defense this year. 26th in DVOA, 21st in adjusted line yards, 24th in yards per carry allowed. On their last 8 games, getting even worse. Over 150 rushing yards per game allowed on 4.9 yards per carry. The good news for the Saints is the Bucs very well may have the worst rushing attack in all of football. They're 27th in DVOA, 28th in adjusted line yards, dead last in yards per carry as a team. There was a little 3-week stretch there where it looked like the Bucs were getting the run game going, but the last 2 weeks that has come crashing down. In weeks 12 through 14, the Bucs were averaging 133 rushing yards per game on 4.78 yards per carry, but in the 2 weeks since then, back down to 2.68 yards per carry. It's worth noting, though, the Bucs really couldn't run the ball at all in their first matchup, just 3.5 yards per carry. They still beat the shit out of the Saints. Situational stats on this side of the ball, the edge definitely goes to the Saints defense. Saints defense hasn't been great this year, but they've been great on key downs in key situations. 4th on third down, 10th in the red zone. Bucs offense, 8th and 25th. As far as what I'm betting in this game, I know a lot of the notes I just read off point towards Tampa Bay, but I'm actually on the other side. I'm taking the points in this one. I think the Saints win this game outright. Line's a little sketchy. Everyone's so down on the Saints right now. Just got their asses beat on prime time by the Rams. All of us were watching. Meanwhile, the Bucs have won 4 in a row. Everyone's huge on Baker Mayfield. Everyone's sharing Baker Mayfield versus Patrick Mahomes memes. This is the ultimate sell high spot for Tampa Bay and an ultimate buy low spot for New Orleans. I think the Saints win. Give me New Orleans plus 2.5 next game. Next up is Carolina at Jacksonville. And to be honest, I don't even really want to talk about this game. Looks like Trevor Lawrence is out now. I think I may bet Carolina, but there's too many games on the board for me to waste my time talking about games I don't really like. So next game, Falcons on the road in Chicago to play the Bears. Chicago laying 2.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 38. This line was at 3 earlier in the week. Public is definitely leaning towards Chicago, but looks like the Sharps bought in on Atlanta at 3. because we're mostly looking at 2.5s across the board now. I think there are still a couple heavily juiced 3s available, though. Let's talk injuries. Falcons offensively are pretty much fully healthy. They got that right tackle listed as questionable, but he's been practicing all week, so I assume he's going to play. Taylor Heineke is going to get the start at quarterback again. No new injuries on the Falcons defense. Anderson and Jarrett are both still on the IR, but I'm pretty sure they've been out for a while, and I'm pretty sure they're both out for the season. But no new injuries. Chicago offensively is going to be without Darnell Mooney at wide receiver. I believe he got hurt last week in the Arizona game. St. Brown is back, though, and he's missed most of the season. He hasn't played in 5 or 6 weeks now, so they lose a receiver and get a receiver back. Tight end Cole Kmet and the center both listed as questionable. Both of those guys missed practice earlier in the week, and both were practicing on Friday, so I would imagine they're both going to be game time decisions. Bears defense is completely healthy. I mean, they have that guy Nakagwe who's out, but he's not listed on this graphic. He's supposed to be the edge rusher opposite of Montez Sweat. He's missed 3 straight games now. So let's match these two teams up on the field. And Taylor Heineke coming off a really solid start against the Colts. 23 of 33, 229 yards, 6.9 yards per attempt, a touchdown, 99 passer rating. That's solid for Heineke. And what makes it more impressive is the Colts defense was really picking up steam heading into that game. In weeks 9 through 15, the Colts defense was 8th in EPA per play and 4th in EPA per dropback. So the Colts defense was playing solid against the pass. Heineke had himself a good game. He's going to need to be good again, though, because he's matched up against a dramatically improved Bears defense. Against the pass, Chicago started the season off as one of the worst defenses in the NFL defending the pass. Weeks 1 through 9, the Bears were 30th in EPA per play, 31st in EPA per dropback, 31st in success rate per dropback. An average opponent pass rating of 106, averaging just 1 takeaway per game. 1.1 sacks per game. Sorry, one more stat there. In weeks 10 through 16, so since week 10, second, average opponent pass rating down to 68, 2.3 takeaways per game, sacks nearly tripled. So this is a brand new Bears defense. The second half of the season, we've seen a brand new Bears defense. So I don't have a ton of faith in Taylor Heineke following that good game up with another good game against a Bears defense that seems to be playing pretty well right now. That being said, is the Falcons run game back? Because they went off against the Colts. 30 carries, 177 yards on the ground, 5.9 yards per carry. In the 3 games before that, just 2.64 yards per carry. So the Falcons run game, we thought it was going to be there all year, hasn't been, showed up last week. And you can see the full season numbers for the Atlanta run game, just not what we expected. 21st in DVOA, 16th in yards per carry, 21st in adjusted line yards. Now, last week they played the Colts, though, a team that's been struggling to defend the run all year, or most of the year, I should say. They've had some good games in there. Now they play the Chicago Bears, who have one of the NFL's best run defenses on the season, 3rd in DVOA, 3rd in adjusted line yards, and 3rd in yards per carry allowed. But are we starting to see some vulnerability from the Bears run defense? Through the first 10 weeks of the season, Chicago's allowing just 3.22 yards per carry and 76 rush yards per game, looking like one of the best run defenses in the NFL. In the 5 games since then, though, they're allowing, just 90 rushing yards per game, so not a ton. But 4.46 yards per carry. So the run defense for the Bears hasn't quite been as elite recently. Now, 2 of those last 5 games were against the Lions, who have a very dominant rushing attack, but 4.7 yards per carry allowed to the Cardinals, 4.3 yards per carry allowed to the Vikings. I don't know if I trust this Bears run defense like I did a month ago. Situational stats on this side of the ball. Edge goes to the Falcons offense simply because the Bears defense has been terrible in key downs. Falcons offensively, 13th on 3rd downs, back at 26 in the red zone. Bears defense, 29th and 32nd. Now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. Falcons defending the pass. We'll start there. Numbers on the year, just 28th in DVOA, but they are 12th in opponent passer rating and 8th in yards per attempt, 15th in EPA per dropback. If you're wondering how the advanced metrics have them so far back when they actually have some good numbers against the pass, it's because they've had a pretty easy schedule as far as opposing quarterbacks and opposing passing attacks. They've played just 2 offenses in the top 10 of passing DVOA all season. But here's the thing with the Falcons pass defense, they've been steadily improving all season. In fact, since week 10, they're in the top 10 of basically all advanced metrics. 5th in EPA per play, 9th in EPA per dropback, 10th in success rate per dropback. Now, they did play Kyler Murray, Derek Carr. Well, Derek Carr's all right. Tim Boyle, Bryce Young, and Gardner Minshew. That certainly helps the numbers, but as a whole, we have to acknowledge the Falcons have been doing a much better job defending the pass as of late. And now they get Justin Fields, and I know the Bears as a whole are playing much, much better football, But is it really Fields? I mean, on the season with Fields at quarterback, their average passing DVOA is minus 1.37%. Certainly not good. That would be 24th on a season-long basis. And yeah, the Bears have been playing better, but if you look at Justin Fields' last 4 starts, 73 passer rating, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 58 completion percentage, 5.66 yards per attempt. I mean, these numbers are disgusting. These are not good numbers. So, like I've said it twice now, the Bears look good, but is it really Justin Fields? And can we count on the Bears to get the run game going here? Because the Falcons' run defense has been great all season. 5th in DVOA, 7th in adjusted line yards, 9th in yards per carry. Over the last 4 games, Atlanta allowing just 107 rush yards per game on 3.5 yards per carry. So they're not slowing down. This Falcons run defense is reliable. And we know the bread and butter of this Bears offense is getting the run game going. On the season, they're 10th in DVOA, 6th in yards per carry, 8th in adjusted line yards. This might be a bit of a sell high spot for the Bears run game because they're coming off a monster performance. Against the Cardinals, they ran the ball 39 times for 6.4 yards per carry, 250 rush yards. So everyone's high on the Bears run game right now, but the Cardinals run defense is about as bad as it gets. 31st in DVOA, 32nd in adjusted line yards, 30th in yards per carry. In the 5 games before the Arizona game, the Bears are averaging less than 4 yards per carry. So I think this Bears rushing attack is overvalued right now, and I think the Atlanta defense is going to give them some problems. Situational stats on this side of the ball, edge goes to the Falcons again. Atlanta defensively, 3rd on 3rd downs, 1st in the red zone. Bears offense not bad, but not as good as the Falcons defense, 11th and 12th. As far as what I'm betting in this one, I'm on the Birds here. I think it's the perfect time to sell high on the Bears. Can Taylor Heineke throw 2 or 3 picks and ruin this for me? Of course. But you know what? Justin Fields could potentially do the same thing. I think the Falcons win this game. And then you add in the fact that the Falcons have already played 4 games this year decided by 2 points or less. I'm loving that I'm getting plus 2.5, plus 3 points. So I'm probably going to grab one of those juiced Falcon 3s. So give me Atlanta plus 3. Next game. The Raiders on the road in Indianapolis to play the Colts. Colts are now laying 4 points in this one. Total sitting at 42.5. Action's looking pretty split on this one. Public slightly leaning towards the Colts and the sharp action slightly leaning towards the Raiders, but really nothing at all. The line did move from 3.5 up to 4 on Saturday morning, though. Good news for the Colts on the injury front. Looks like Michael Pittman is going to be back at wide receiver. He did not play last week against Atlanta, and he was definitely missed. Also looks like Braden Smith is going to be back at right tackle. He's been practicing all week. So I believe that Zach Moss is going to be the only missing piece from that Colts offense. Colts defense is missing a safety. Obviously, Dallas Flowers still on the IR, the corner. But the big one is Kenny Moore listed as questionable, and he did not practice on Friday, so it's looking like he might miss this game. This graphic is wrong, by the way. He actually plays the slot. So it's showing him on the edge. He's not. That's Dallas Flowers and him should be flipped. But he's probably, Kenny Moore, probably the second best player on this Colts defense behind DeForest Buckner. On the Raiders side, dealing with some injuries on the offense here. Josh Jacobs listed as doubtful, looking like he's going to miss his 3rd straight game. Zamir White will be getting the carries again at running back. Michael Mayer is out again at tight end. Center and right tackle also questionable, but they've been practicing all week, so I think they're both going to play. Nothing on the Raiders defense, though. Raiders defensively completely healthy and ready to go. So let's match these 2 teams up on the field, and I think it's safe to say that these guys like playing for Antonio Pierce, man. Since Antonio Pierce took over as head coach in Week 9, the Raiders defense is 1st in EPA per play, 1st in EPA per rush, and 5th in EPA per dropback. This has been arguably the best defense in the NFL over the last 8 weeks. Now, you may be wondering, well, Kyle, if they've been the best defense in the NFL over the last 8 weeks, which is 7 games for them, how come they're only 4-3? Well, it's because their offense is almost the opposite in that same span, 27th overall, 17th rushing, 27th passing. Now, normally, a Colts home game might bring up their home-away rushing splits because they've been much better getting the run game going at home, 4.9 yards per carry at home compared to 3.3 on the road. But the thing is, this Raiders run defense has been so freakishly good, I don't think I can count on the Colts to get the run game going here, which means there's going to be a lot of pressure on Gardner Minshew to produce. Now, Minshew coming off a bounce-back month. It seems like Gardner Minshew, whenever the public starts to count him out, he bounces back. You can see his passer rating slowly declining every month of the season. It was down to 73.7 in November, but December he bounces back with an 89.1. Now, one thing to point out, though, regarding Minshew, Raiders run a ton of zone coverage, fourth most in the NFL according to FTN. Now, you might be looking at these splits in the graphic and thinking, Kyle, these aren't that extreme, but I took a deeper look. Gardner Minshew has only played 3 games this year against top 10 zone-heavy teams: Tampa, Jacksonville, Carolina. And if you look at his numbers from those games specifically, they're not good. 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 72 passer rating. Tampa and Jacksonville were his 2 worst starts of the season. Now here comes the red-hot zone-heavy Raiders defense. I don't like the matchup for Gardner Minshew. I don't like the matchup for the Colts run game. I think the Raiders defense is going to give them problems. Now, on the other side of the ball, it's tough to make a case for Aiden O'Connell. I mean, yeah, he's only had 3 career road starts, and one was all the way back against the Chargers, his first career start, but 62 passer rating, 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Good Lord. The question's going to be, can we count on the Raiders and Zamir White to give him some run support? And if you use the Raiders rushing numbers on the season, the answer is hard no. They're 29th in yards per carry, 27th in DVOA, 26th in PFF rushing grade. But if you isolate it to just the last 3 weeks, this Raiders offense has been running the football efficiently. They're 4th in yards per carry, 3rd in EPA per rush. Their last 2 games were without Josh Jacobs. Zamir White averaging over 100 yards per game and over 5 yards per carry in those 2. And I was gassing up this Colts defense heading into last week. Grover Stewart's back. Juju Brents is back. The Colts are finally healthy. This is a good defense. The Falcons just ran the ball all over Indianapolis, 29 points and over 400 total yards. The Taylor Heineke-led Falcons was too much firepower for the Colts defense. So safe to say, all of my faith in the Colts defense is just gone. In my opinion, this handicap comes down to one simple question: can the Raiders run the ball on the Colts? If you think the answer is yes, then you should take the 4 points. If you don't, lay them. And in my opinion, I think the answer is yes. I'm putting my faith in Antonio Pierce. I'm putting my faith in this suddenly red-hot Raiders defense. Give me the points, man. Raiders +4 next game. Steelers, Seahawks in Seattle. Seattle now laying 4.5 points at home here. The total sitting at 41. Looking like the early action was coming in on Pittsburgh, but on Thursday, some money must have come in on Seattle, because this number pretty suddenly jumped from 3.5 up to 4.5, which is where it's sitting now for the most part. Steelers offense is completely healthy. I mean, Kenny Pickett's listed as questionable, but looks like Mason Rudolph is going to start whether he's cleared or not. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kenny Pickett's been shut down for the season. I really don't know what's going on, because Kenny Pickett is listed as questionable, but if you look at the Steelers depth chart, Mason Rudolph is listed as QB1. So I think we can count on Rudolph starting this game. Steelers defense dealing with all kinds of problems here. First of all, crazy thin at inside linebacker. Cole Holcomb, Quan Alexander, both still on the IR. They have been for some time now. And now Elandon Roberts, he's out as well. He's the 3rd inside linebacker, and he's been playing well. He's out. So the Steelers are going to have their 4th and 5th linebackers starting in this game. They're also missing 3 safeties. Minkah Fitzpatrick is out. Keanu Neal still on the IR. And Trenton Thompson is out as well. So the Steelers are going to have their 4th and 5th safeties starting in this game as well. On the Seattle side, offensively, Walker is questionable at running back. He missed practice early in the week, but he was out there Friday. I don't know what's going on with DK Metcalf, because ESPN has him listed as questionable, but I looked at Seattle's injury report that they released for Friday, and he wasn't on it. So I don't know if ESPN just hasn't updated their site, or maybe the Seahawks messed up when they released their injury report. I put him as questionable in this graphic, but I'm not sure if he's really questionable. On the defensive side, Seattle has ruled safety Jamal Adams out for this game, but they've still got Diggs and Julian Love back there at safety, so not really too worried. They're deep at that position, not really too worried about that one. Linebacker Jordan Brooks is listed as questionable. He did practice on Friday, though, so I assume he'll be a game-time decision. Witherspoon, he's listed as questionable, but he hasn't missed a practice all week, so I would assume he's going to play. So let's match these 2 teams up on the field. And Mason Rudolph, man, coming off a great game. Never thought I'd say that again, or ever, to be honest. 17 of 27, 290 yards, 10.7 yards per attempt, couple touchdowns, 124 passer rating. It was the highest passer rating by a Steelers quarterback this season, the highest yards per attempt by a Steelers quarterback this season, the most amount of pass yards in a game by a Steelers quarterback this season. He has as many 2-touchdown starts as Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett combined. So can we expect a repeat performance from Mason Rudolph? And his career home away splits would suggest definitely not. On his career on the road, just 6 yards per attempt, 56% completions, a 4.4 interception rate is crazy, 68 passer rating. So Mason Rudolph, historically over his career, not a good quarterback on the road. And we also have to acknowledge that he's coming off a game against the Bengals defense, a defense it's hit rock bottom. Since week 10, the Bengals are 30th in EPA per play, 30th in EPA per dropback, and 29th in success rate per dropback. So he's coming off a game against a really bad pass defense. Not that the Seahawks pass defense has been any better. I mean, during that span since week 10, Seahawks are pretty much dead last in every category when it comes to pass defense. But here's the thing. Look at those games. Look who the Seahawks have played. The 49ers twice, the Cowboys in Dallas, the Rams in LA, the Eagles. I mean, let's cut their defensive numbers a little bit of slack. They've played the hardest stretch of schedule of any team in the NFL. And by the way, they shut Jalen Hurts and the Eagles down when they came to Seattle. Jalen Hurts had his worst game of the season. Just a 40 passer rating, 143 yards, 4.6 yards per attempt, 2 picks. So they shut him down. On the season, though, the Seahawks pass defense isn't good. It's just not nearly as bad as the numbers indicate from the last 5 or 6 games. On the season, they're 24th in DVOA, 18th in yards per pass attempt allowed, 18th in opponent passer rating. Seahawks pass rush has been effective as far as generating pressure, but they just aren't getting the sacks. They're 10th in pressure rate, 10th in QB hurry rate, but back at 21st in adjusted sack rate. And generating pressure could be important here because Mason Rudolph, look, we're dealing with a super small sample size here, but the 11 dropbacks where Mason Rudolph's been pressured, he's 6 of 11, just 19 yards. That's 1.7 yards per attempt. So putting pressure on Mason Rudolph could completely dismantle this Steelers offense. And when it comes to the Steelers run game, it's just fallen off, man. In the last 4 weeks, just 3.53 yards per carry, 99 rushing yards per game. In the 4 weeks before that, it was looking like the Steelers were going to have this explosive run game down the stretch. They were averaging 174 rush yards per game on 5.56 yards per carry. And I'll give them a pass for the Patriots game. New England's got the best run defense in the NFL, but the Colts, the Bengals, I mean, struggling to run the ball in those defenses, you don't get a pass for that. On the season, the Steelers were up to about 12th in rushing DVOA, and now back to 16th and 17th in yards per carry. The good news for the Steelers run game would be the Seahawks run defense is not good, and it's approaching rock bottom. On the season, they're 17th in adjusted line yards, 22nd in DVOA, 25th in yards per carry. And if you look in their last 10 games, it's fallen off. Their last 10 games, they're allowing over 5 yards per carry. They're dead last in rushing EPA, dead last in success rate per rush, 154 rush yards per game. They actually started off the season pretty well through the first 5 games, allowing just 3.17 yards per carry. Situational stats on this side of the ball, edge goes to no one. Steelers offense has been terrible on key downs. Seahawks defense, terrible on key downs. Now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. And the Steelers pass defense, I'm not sure what to say about this unit anymore because the last 5 games, the quarterbacks they've seen, check this out. The Steelers, last 5 quarterbacks, Bailey Zappi, Jake Browning twice, Kyler Murray, and Gardner Minshew. Those 5 quarterbacks all gave the Steelers problems. A 98.7 average passer rating, 9 passing touchdowns to 5 picks, 8.2 yards per attempt. So they're getting the ball downfield. 68% completions. On the season, the Steelers still do have good-looking numbers against the pass because they started off the season so hot. They're 9th in DVOA, 21st in yards per attempt allowed, 7th in passer rating, but the pass rush has fallen off, and I was talking about this last week. Steelers pass rush, you'd think it would be elite. On the season, they're just 11th in adjusted sack rate, 13th in pressure rate, 16th and 18th in hit rate and hurry rate. One positive angle for the Steelers pass defense, though, is they blitz a lot. And Geno Smith has not handled the blitz well. He's 30th in yards per attempt and 28th in passer rating when blitzed, 9th and 12th when he's not blitzed. A positive angle for Geno Smith, though, Steelers do run a lot of man coverage, and he's been significantly better at throwing the ball against man coverage. Against zone, just 5.6 yards per attempt and a 1.4 touchdown rate. Against man, 6.81 and a 5.3% touchdown rate. We can pull up Geno Smith's numbers from his first start back, and they were good. 69% completion, 6.3 yards per attempt needs to be a little higher, but 2 touchdowns, 104.7 passer rating. Not really going to throw him a parade for having a good game throwing the ball against Tennessee. But still, it was his first game back from injury, so it was good to see that, even though it was against a Titans defense that was missing all 5 starters from their secondary. As far as the Seahawks running the ball in this one, we can poke holes in the Steelers' pass defense, but they've been doing a good job stopping the run. On their last 6 games, they're allowing just 3.8 yards per carry and 96.8 rushing yards per game. Compared to the first 9, stopping the run was looking like a problem for the Steelers. You can see the numbers a lot worse in the first 9 games, but the Steelers' run defense has been solid. Really, the only game where the Steelers' run defense just fell off was that Colts game. Colts ran all over the Steelers, 5 yards per carry, 170 yards on the ground. In their last 5 games, other than the Colts, they're allowing just 3.45 yards per carry. And the Seahawks run game this year has just been a disappointment. It's not practical joke terrible. They're 20th in rushing TVOA, 25th in adjusted line yards, 21st in yards per carry. But considering they had a great year running the ball with Kenneth Walker last year, then they added Charbonnet. I think Seahawks fans were expecting more of a run game this year. And if you isolate it to just their recent games, I mean, they've been particularly bad. In their last 6 games, just 3.57 yards per carry, 76 rushing yards per game. Situational stats on this side of the ball, no edge on third down. They're both bad on third down, but in the red zone, the edge goes to the Steelers defense. 5th, Seahawks offense back at 28th. As far as betting this game, I'm not taking the Steelers. I'm not betting the Steelers right now. I do not think that's a good team. I don't trust Mike Tomlin at all right now. But 4.5 is a tough number to lay with a Seahawks team that I don't really like. So I'm on Seattle, and I probably will bet it. I doubt this one makes one of my top bets or anything. Give me Seattle minus 4.5 next game. Chargers at Broncos. I'm skipping this one. The Russell Wilson shit is crazy. I think I'm on Denver. Probably will bet Denver, but this will be one of the ones I post on the website. Next game. Bengals on the road in Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. Chiefs are laying 6.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 44. So this line was at 7. It looks like the sharp action bought in heavy on Cincinnati at that number. Pretty much down to 6.5 across the board now. Bengals offense completely healthy with the exception of Jamar Chase. He's listed as questionable, but he did practice on Thursday and Friday. Other than that, clean injury report for Cincinnati offensively. Same story for the Bengals defense. No injuries to report. The Bengals are truly one of the healthiest teams in the NFL with the exception of obviously Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Chiefs offensively. We're missing Kadarius Toney at wide receiver. They're also going to be missing Donovan Smith at left tackle. Chiefs also have some serious issues at running back here. Check this out. So Isaiah Pacheco did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He did participate on a light practice on Friday, but from what I'm reading, he really might not play here. And that's huge because Clyde Edwards-Helaire also hasn't practiced all week. It's looking like he probably won't play. And remember, Jerick McKinnon is on the IR. So the Chiefs have serious issues at running back here. On the defensive side, Kansas City's in pretty good shape, though, with the exception of L'Jarius Sneed. I thought he wasn't going to play. Apparently, he's been upgraded to questionable, but from what I'm reading, he still hasn't practiced all week. So if I had to guess, I'd say he probably doesn't play. So let's match these two teams up on the field. And Jake Browning kind of turned back into a pumpkin last week. It was pretty ugly. 3 interceptions, a 69 passer rating. Now, he did throw for 335 yards on 8 yards per attempt. So the Bengals pass game was working, and they were moving the ball. It was just the mistakes, 3 big mistakes. And we can't just let 3 plays make us forget that in the last 5 weeks, Jake Browning is 3rd in yards per pass attempt, 1st in completion percentage, and 10th in passer rating. Heading into the Steelers game, Jake Browning's turnover-worthy play rate was 11th best amongst the 39 qualified quarterbacks. So he hasn't shown us that he can be a turnover machine. Yeah, he had 1 bad game and he turned the ball over a few times, but I really don't think we should let that move the needle for us, especially considering Jamar Chase did not play in the Pittsburgh game, and it looks like Jamar Chase is going to return for this one. He's matched up against a Chiefs pass defense that it's definitely a good unit. The Chiefs have defended the pass well all year. Not quite the same recently. Now, I know they shut down O'Connell, and they actually just lost to the Raiders, but O'Connell was 9 of 21, 62 yards. He actually didn't complete a single pass from the second quarter on, I believe. So O'Connell didn't do anything in the Raiders game. But in weeks 1 through 7, the Chiefs were 6th in EPA per play and 3rd in EPA per dropback. They were looking like one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. From weeks 8 to 15, they're back at 15th and 11th. So, I mean, still a good pass defense, but not quite the same as where they were to start the year. And like I said earlier, it's looking like Sneed is going to be out for this one. That's their top corner, leaving them vulnerable. Now, we know the Chiefs defense thrives off bringing pressure, right? They're 6th in pressure rate, 10th in QB hit rate, 1st in adjusted sack rate. But believe it or not, Jake Browning's been really good at handling pressure. Now, it's a small sample size, but amongst 41 qualified quarterbacks, Jake Browning 5th in yards per attempt and 7th in completion percentage. Now, some of the deeper metrics indicate that he's had some good luck. He's back at 31st in PFF passer grade, 34th in turnover worthy play rate when pressured. So the surface level numbers are much better than the deeper metrics say, but still, Jake Browning's been pretty good against pressure so far. Another thing to take note of, Spagnuolo loves the blitz. Chiefs are 4th in blitz rate in the NFL. Jake Browning's been really good against the blitz. 7th in yards per attempt, 7th in PFF passer grade, 1st in big time throw rate. Now he's back at 36 in turnover worthy play rate, but like I said, Browning, we're dealing with a small sample size here, so 3 interceptions in the Steelers game could seriously skew those numbers. Luckily for Browning, this Chiefs defense hasn't been forcing turnovers at all. They're just 24th in takeaways per game, and in the last 8 games, they have just 3 interceptions as a team. Now, what about the Bengals' run game? It's been pretty mediocre, pretty streaky, pretty tough to rely on. On the season, they're 17th in DVOA, 17th in adjusted line yards, 26th in yards per carry. Since Browning has taken over at quarterback, it hasn't gotten much better. Just 86 rushing yards per game, 3.85 yards per carry, 15th in EPA per rush, 20th in success rate per rush. Cincinnati's going to have to get the run going in this one, and the Chiefs' defensive numbers against the run indicate they probably should be able to. This Chiefs' run defense is getting real bad. 29th in DVOA, 30th in adjusted line yards, 28th in yards per carry. Chiefs' defense against the run has been slowly trending towards the back of the league. And they're getting close. 29th in DVOA, the 4th worst run defense in the NFL. Like I just said before, the Raiders pretty much made it clear, we're not going to throw the ball. We're just going to run the ball on you, and the Chiefs couldn't do anything to stop it. Zamir White in that game, 22 carries, 145 yards, 6.59 yards per carry. So Chiefs had no answers for the Raiders on the ground. I know the Bengals' run game hasn't been great, but all signs point to Cincinnati being able to run the ball here. Situational stats on this side of the ball. Edge goes to the Chiefs on third downs. Kansas City's defense actually 6th on third down. Cincinnati back at 19th offensively. Overall, on this side of the ball, I don't have a ton of faith in the Chiefs' defense right now. I expect to see Joe Mixon get it going. I expect to see Chase Brown get it going. I think Jake Browning's going to have a bounce-back game as well. So I like the angles for the Bengals offense in this one. But what about the other side of the ball? Because the Bengals pass defense, wow. It's really fallen apart. On the season, they're 22nd in DVOA, dead last in yards per pass attempt allowed, 24th in opponent passer rating. In their last 6 games, it's gotten especially bad. 9 passing touchdowns allowed to just 3 interceptions, 8.6 yards per attempt, and 70.7% completions. Mason Rudolph was slinging the ball all over the field on this Cincinnati defense, and I feel like that sentence alone tells the whole story. In that game, Mason Rudolph had 290 yards, 2 touchdowns on 10.7 yards per attempt, a 124 passer rating. Didn't know Mason Rudolph could even count to 124. The good news, though, like I mentioned earlier, Cam Taylor-Britt looks like he's going to return at corner. He's their best defensive back. Well, he's their best corner. He's been out for the last 9 weeks, and it's pretty congruent. If you look at the Bengals' pass defense numbers, things started getting bad when he went out, so getting him back is huge, especially because the Bengals pass rush just hasn't quite been the same this year. That's been the backbone of this Bengals team last couple years when they went on these playoff runs. On the season, they're just 12th in pressure rate, 11th in QB hit rate, 14th in adjusted sack rate. Pass rush is going to be huge in this one because we just talked about how Lamar Jackson's been great under pressure. We talk about how Jake Browning has great numbers under pressure. Mahomes doesn't. Patrick Mahomes has really struggled with pressure this year. Amongst the same 41 qualified quarterbacks, Mahomes just 19th in completion percentage, 40th in interceptions, 22nd in turnover-worthy play rate, 27th in passer rating. And speaking of Patrick Mahomes, this Chiefs offense just hasn't quite looked the same. Through the first 11 games, Patrick Mahomes had 21 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 68% completion, 7.1 yards per attempt, a 96 passer rating. No, certainly not the best Patrick Mahomes season. In fact, it was one of his worst seasons, but it was still formidable. In the last 4 games, though, who is this guy? Just an 80 passer rating, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 63.7% completions, 6.5 yards per attempt, so the yards per attempt is down. Now, there's a lot of things we can point the finger at. The Chiefs' run game has been really bad. It's fallen off, but I wouldn't look there because Mahomes has spent most of his career without a run game. I think it could be the pressure, because one thing about Patrick Mahomes, he spent most of his career with a top 3 to 5 pass protection. Something Andy Reid and the Chiefs have always prioritized is keeping the quarterback safe. So Mahomes has benefited from having a great pass protection every single year of his career. We're just now seeing that break down. The pass protection hasn't quite been the same, and we're seeing Mahomes struggle. And then obviously the one everyone talks about is the lack of weapons, and it's really hard to unsee that. The drop passes, lack of wide receiver weapons. It's a combination of a lot of things, but Patrick Mahomes really struggling. Now, to be fair, it's worth noting that the Patriots, Raiders, and Bills, all top 10 defenses since week 10. So they've played 3 tough defenses there, but struggling against the Green Bay Packers, who this is the same Green Bay Packer defense that got lit up by Tommy DeVito, Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield. I mean, those 3 quarterbacks lit the Packers defense up. Mahomes didn't. But you know what? We just saw Cincinnati struggle with Nick Mullins. We saw him struggle with Mason Rudolph. So if there was ever a perfect bounce back spot for Mahomes to get back on track, it might be this one. And some more good news for Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. Bengals can't stop the run either. On the season, they're 28th in run defense DVOA, 29th in yards per carry allowed, 26th in adjusted line yards. Now, we do have to take note that they've been better recently. Through the first 11 games, they were allowing 5 yards per carry, 139 rushing yards per game. In the last 4, just 3.62 yards per carry, 93 rush yards per game. So the Bengals' run defense has stepped up. I wouldn't call this a good run defense yet, but it's been better. We saw DJ Reader go down in the Vikings game, and the Vikings ran all over Cincinnati. And if you don't know who DJ Reader is, he's probably the Bengals' best run stopper. He's the nose tackle. He went down, and we're like, oh, Bengals are never going to be able to stop the run again. Well, last week against the Steelers, just 30 carries, 113 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. Maybe that's because they were trailing for most of the game, so they knew the Steelers were going to run it, but I don't know. It's really tough to get a read on. This Bengals run defense hasn't been good for most of the season. It's been better recently. But does that even matter? Because the Chiefs rushing offense, I mean, on the season, the numbers look pretty good because Pacheco started off the year looking great. They're 12th in DVOA, 24th in adjusted line yards, and 14th in yards per carry. But in their last 2 games, they were held to just 2.8 yards per carry. And like I mentioned before, that running back room is so banged up. Pacheco may not play. McKinnon's on the IR. Clyde Edwards-Helaire may not play. He's got an illness. All kinds of problems with the Chiefs in the running back room and the offensive line, if we're being honest. So even though the Bengals not a reliable run defense, I do not trust the Chiefs run game at all. Situational stats on this side of the ball. Edge goes to the Kansas City offense on third downs, definitely. Cincinnati back at 28th defensively on third downs. Chiefs are 5th. Kind of a wash in the red zone. The Bengals have surprisingly been pretty good defensively in the red zone. As far as betting this game, I mean, simple question. How can we lay 6.5 points for the Chiefs right now? I mean, yes, they are due for a bounce back game, and maybe this is it, but they're going to need to prove it to me first. Chiefs haven't won. Listen to this. The Chiefs haven't won a game at Arrowhead since week 7. Over 2 months ago. The last 3 Chiefs home games, they're 0-3, averaging just 16 points per game. 16! 0-3 in the last 3 Chiefs home games. Give me the Bengals, man. Cincinnati plus 6.5. Next game. Sunday Night Football, the Carrie Underwood Bowl. Packers on the road in Minnesota. Minnesota laying 1 point here, and the total sitting at 43.5. Action's coming in all over Green Bay. Pretty heavy in this one. Actually, Packers are looking like one of, if not the most public bet on the board this week. This line was at 1.5. It's dropped down to an even 1 mostly everywhere. Couple injuries to the Packers offense. Luke Musgrave still on the IR. Christian Watson listed as doubtful. That other wide receiver, Wicks, he's listed as questionable, but he hasn't practiced all week, so it's looking like he might not play. So Jordan Love definitely missing some receiving targets in this one. Green Bay's defense is an absolute mess as per usual. Jair Alexander suspended for that coin toss thing, which is just wild. If you don't know what happened in that, so he wasn't a captain. He wasn't supposed to go out there. He went out there for the coin toss. He called tails or whatever. They won, and he said he elected to kick. And if it wasn't for the referee saying, "Do you mean defer?" If the referee didn't hook him up, the referee helped him out. If the referee didn't do that, the Green Bay Packers would have kicked off twice in the first quarter and the third quarter. So he really messed up there. And in the interview, didn't even seem like he cared. It's tough. It's a tough look for Alexander and the Packers fans. But yeah, he's suspended. Eric Stokes back on the IR. Good news, though, Darnell Savage may be back at safety, so that is a positive, a rare positive for the Packers defense. He's been practicing all week. Looks like Devondre Campbell is going to miss another game at linebacker, though. Minnesota's offense is completely healthy with the exception of Jordan Addison, and Cam Akers is obviously hurt too. But Jordan Addison practiced on Thursday and Friday, so I think he's going to play. And it looks like they're going with Jaron Hall at quarterback instead of Nick Mullins. So Minnesota making their fourth quarterback. Is it four? Yeah. Fourth quarterback change of the year for the Vikings. Vikings are banged up on defense, though. Not only is Dean Lowry still on the IR, but the guy who's been starting in his spot, his name's Roy, he's also out. So they're going to have the third string there. And the same goes for Wanham on the edge. And he's not even supposed to be the starter, by the way. He's been starting in place of Marcus Davenport, who's been on the IR for a few months now. So Vikings defense definitely dealing with a couple key injuries. So let's match these two teams up on the field. And as you know, Jordan Love's been excellent recently. Since week 9, Jordan Love, 4th in EPA per play, 3rd in EPA per dropback, 4th in success rate per dropback. Some other Jordan Love ranks since week 9 amongst 29 qualified quarterbacks, 7th in completion percentage, tied for 3rd in touchdowns, tied for 4th in interceptions, 6th in passer grade, 6th in big time throw rate, 9th in turnover worthy play rate, 4th in passer rating. Sorry for the unloading all those numbers on you, but the point is, Jordan Love has been great in the second half of the season. And the Packers' passing offense as a whole has climbed all the way up to 4th at DVOA. It's a top 5 passing attack according to advanced metrics. Just 18th in yards per attempt and 13th in passer rating, though. Now he's matched up against a Vikings pass defense that has just really turned their season around. Through weeks 1 through 5, they were 21st in EPA per play and 25th in EPA per dropback. Average opponent passer rating of 107. Since week 6, 7th, 6th, and the average opponent passer rating has dropped to 80.4. We do have to take note, though, that the Vikings pass defense has looked a little vulnerable in the last 2 weeks. Jake Browning and Jared Goff, those two guys combined for over 290 yards, 7.1 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns and a pick, 98.7 passer rating. So what numbers do we have to look at next? You already know, whenever you're handicapping a Vikings game, you got to look at the numbers against the blitz and the numbers against the zone, because the Vikings blitz more than any other team in the NFL, and they run zone coverage more than any other team in the NFL. So Jordan Love, when blitzed amongst 30 qualified quarterbacks, he's pretty good. 16th in yards per attempt, 11th in completion percentage, 10th in passer grade, 3rd in big time throw rate, 20th in turnover worthy play rate, and 11th in passer rating. So pretty good, not elite, but Jordan Love's been pretty good against the blitz. But he's definitely had more success throwing the ball against man coverage. And like I said, the Vikings run a ton of zone. So against man, Jordan Love is 7th in passer rating, 3rd in touchdown rate. Against zone, 20th and 13th. So Jordan Love's been great, and the matchup isn't terrible for him. But I like this Vikings defense, and I actually think they'll give Jordan Love some problems here. I like the matchup for Minnesota. But what about the run game? Are the Packers going to be able to run the ball here? Well, Green Bay's coming off arguably their best rushing performance on the season. Last week against the Panthers, 34 carries, 162 yards on the ground. Aaron Jones specifically had 21 carries for 127 yards, 6 yards per carry. On the season, the Green Bay rushing attack is slightly below average. They're 19th in DVOA, 10th in yards per carry. So actually pretty middle of the pack. But the thing with Green Bay's run game is they've been much better the second half of the season. Over the last 8 weeks, they're averaging 123 rush yards per game on 4.63 yards per carry. As you can see, much better than their numbers from the first 7 weeks. And they're in for a tough matchup here because the Vikings defense has been great against the run all season. 9th in DVOA, 5th in yards per carry. Minnesota just held the Lions to 4 yards per carry. That's something that hadn't been done by a Lions opponent in over 8 weeks. In the last 5 Vikings games, opponents are averaging just 3.75 yards per carry, just 88 rush yards per game. Situational stats on this side of the ball. Edge goes to Green Bay on 3rd downs, Minnesota in the red zone. Now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball, and we'll talk about the Packers pass defense that's been truly laugh out loud bad recently. Over the last 3 games, the Packers have faced Baker Mayfield, Tommy DeVito, Bryce Young. In those games, they've allowed 7 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 73% completions, and an average passer rating of 128. Now, Baker Mayfield, you can give him a pass for. Baker Mayfield's been great. But Tommy DeVito just got benched. And Bryce Young and the Panthers have statistically the worst passing attack in the NFL this season. An average passer rating in those 3 games of 128 is next level pitiful. On the season, the Green Bay pass defense now ranks 30th in DVOA, 23rd in yards per pass attempt allowed, and 26th in average passer rating. That's great news for Jaron Hall, who's making his 2nd career start, but in reality, it's his 1st career start because he was knocked out of the game with an injury in the 2nd drive against Atlanta. Through 2 drives, Hall was 5 for 6 with 78 yards, so he had decent numbers going, but you can't draw anything from that game. Can we trust Jaron Hall to get the pass game going? I think it's impossible to say. I don't know if anyone really knows what to expect here, but we can say if there's any defense that's just perfect for Jaron Hall to see in this game, Green Bay might be it. I do expect to see Kevin O'Connell come out with a conservative game plan, limit the turnovers. And I think we're going to see Jaron Hall use his legs, not force passes. Hall was, as we know, is an effective rusher at BYU, and we caught a glimpse of that in the Falcons start. So if you're looking for a prop, Jaron Hall over rush yards, maybe. I like Jaron Hall over pass yards as well. I think he's going to shock some people. Packers defense on the season against scrambling quarterbacks, not good. They're allowing 5.3 yards per carry to opposing quarterbacks. That's tied for 30th in the NFL. 25.5 rush yards per game allowed to opposing quarterbacks, 29th in the NFL. So again, Jaron Hall over rushing yards, that might be worth a look. And if you look at the Packers run defense as a whole, I mean, it's similarly struggling. 25th in DVOA, 19th in adjusted line yards, 26th in yards per carry allowed. I will say Green Bay is coming off a couple decent performances as far as limiting the run. They were against Carolina and Tampa. So forgive me if I'm not going to all of a sudden declare the Green Bay Packer run defense good for stopping the Bucs and Panthers on the ground. And by the way, it wasn't even like a shutdown. Those two teams averaged 3.75 yards per carry, 97.5 rush yards per game. Now, the Minnesota rushing numbers on the year are also pretty bad, though. They're 29th in DVOA, 23rd in yards per carry. And the first time Minnesota saw the Packers, the run game was just not a factor. 31 carries, 62 yards. But that was a different Vikings team. That was a Kirk Cousins Vikings team, and they were O'Connell was running an entirely different offense back then. We saw the Vikings get the run game going in the Dobbs games. We've seen Ty Chandler be effective here and there. Now, they weren't effective last week against Detroit, but the Lions have a top 5 run defense, so I'm not going to fault them for that. In fact, if you look at the Minnesota rushing numbers heading into that Lions game, they were picking up steam, like I said. In the 4 games previous to the Lions game, averaging 130.8 rush yards per game on 4.62 yards per carry. Situational stats on this side of the ball, edge to the Vikings offense on third downs, 14th to 27th. Slight edge to the Packers defense in the red zone, though, 17th to 24th. As far as betting this one, I'm on the Vikes here. I think the public's got this one wrong. I know quarterback gets all the attention, and Jordan Love's been great against Jaron Hall making his first real start. I know that sounds crazy, but if you move past the quarterback, no question, Minnesota has the better team. They have the healthier team. They're at home, coming off a loss. I think the Vikes win this one. Give me Minnesota -1. If you want our top bets for all sports, parlays of the day, or you want to join our Discord, head over to KyleKirms.com. The information's right there on the homepage. Let's have ourselves a great Sunday NFL Week 17. 14 games, a lot of action. I'm going to lay out a lot of units in this one. Hopefully it comes back green. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.